to Yep, all right, let's get started. Okay. All right, so hello everyone, welcome to today's event about learning journeys. My name is Valerie Pierre and I'm an e-learning project manager. I help organizations deliver successful digital learning experiences and organize events like today to bring the learning community together so that we can all share and learn from each other. California, I was organizing already some events with the Innovative Technologies for Learning meetup group. And now that I'm based in Zurich, I organize events with David Swaddle's meetup group, the Digital Learning Expert group. So today we are talking about learning journeys. So I think you probably all know what's a learning journey, but just in case, imagine you want to learn something new. For example, becoming an awesome meeting facilitator or do sketchnoting. I see some folks smiling. So assuming you have a purpose for learning this new capability, you're going to go through a series of learning steps or events, stages to finally ingrain that new knowledge or behavior. Overall, that's your learning journey. So we're lucky tonight to have with us three wonderful experts, Henrietta Carbonel, Urs Widmer, and Patrick Veenhoff, and they will share their experience in designing learning journeys. So with each speaker, you'll be gaining different perspectives from higher education, continuing education, to corporate learning and development. So Henrietta will be our first speaker. Henrietta is a scientific collaborator at Unidistance Swiss, which is a university institute in Switzerland, offering different distance university courses in French, German, and English. And with her team, Henrietta has set up, I think it was last year, a series of workshops with students on imagining the distance university of the future. Henrietta will explain the method they've used and what they've learned about the students' journey to be successful. The students need to be successful in their learning journeys. Then we'll have Urs Widmer, CEO of the Swiss Learning Hub, a leading platform provider for professional education and lifelong learning. And Urs will talk to us about competency-based learning journeys. Urs will do a short demo of the Swiss Learning Hub platform. Urs will cover a typical user story of the corporate learning and development sector by demonstrating the learning journey in the context of a compliance scenario. And last but not least, Patrick Veenhoff, Senior Data Education Architect at Swiss Re, will talk about data culture transformation, how to utilize behavioral analytics for skill-based capability building. So I've had the chance to hear a little bit about those different concepts, innovative concepts that Patrick is going to talk about. So such as the notion of data-led capability journey. And I can tell you this should be super interesting. So please make sure you stay with us for this third presentation. I have just a quick overview of the agenda for today so that you have an idea. It's a 15 minutes presentation followed by a 5 minutes Q&A. So I'll gather the questions that come through the chat. And at the end, there'll be a 10 minutes general Q&A so that you also have a chance to interact. We'll stop the recording at that time and you can ask your questions. And finally, we'll have a networking session in Wonder, a web-based platform. And I hope you can stay with us and have fun in this 2D spatial audio environment for further discussions and networking. So with that, I'll stop sharing and let you, Henrietta, go first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valérie. I'll start sharing my presentation. There, can you see it?
Yes.
Thank you. So, wait, just move so I can see. So as Valérie said, I work in distance university, Fernuni for the people in the German-speaking part. And I start this series of 3 presentations with the beginning of the learning journey. So who are our learners and what do they need to succeed in their learning journey? Sort of before the learning journey happens, it's important to understand who they are. And so this is what we did in our university. As Valérie said, we did it last summer, but it's an ongoing project. The main objectives were, we want first our students obviously to succeed with their long-term commitment and reducing dropout. Reducing the gap between their expectations and their experience. And the last thing is we're in a process of transforming the pedagogical model at the institutional level. And that's what's happening in a lot of universities at the moment. They had a traditional setting. What we learned from the pandemic was that we can do things in a different way. And we're seeing what do we want to keep, what do we want to leave. So I'll talk a little bit about the context and then our design method, and then the results. The context is Unidistance Suisse, Fernuni. Our students are quite special students compared to other universities, but probably more in line with Orson Patrick's experience as well, where the people you're dealing with. The average age is 38. So I wrote 37, I think it's 38 since last year. They're in employment, most of them, not all, but a majority. A lot of them have caring responsibilities, families, children, grandparents, whatever. They're part-time students, the vast majority are part-time, and 66% are female. So until 2019, we had a blended model where there were 5 on-campus meetings per semester, and the rest of the time they worked independently with support from our teaching teams. Obviously, like every other university in Switzerland and across the world, we moved online in 2020, 100% online. And we had a lot of good experiences. A lot of students really liked it. Some want to go back, and we wanted to understand a bit what was happening, what would be the ideal pedagogical model for the future. Understanding that this is for our university, that is for non-traditional students, although the term can be contested, sort of students who aren't the traditional 20-something-year-old, who aren't necessarily working to a significant amount of time and things like that. So this is the process we've been through. We've had surveys in the summer 2020. We carried out research on the effect on grades and dropout. In fact, in our case, no negative effects on grades and dropout. On the contrary, dropout has gone down. Speculative research with our teaching team, speculative research with our students, focus groups with our management, and all this to lead into a new teaching strategy for the university. So what I want to focus on today is the student workshops. We used a speculative design method because we felt we wanted to open the possibilities. We didn't want to be constrained to what edtech companies tell us what's going to happen or what the trend is, but really decide what do we want for our students, what do our teachers want, what do our students want, what do they need. And so open up the range of possibilities, think critically about these, what might happen if we decide on one path, what are the positives and negatives, and do this with our students, with our teachers, of course, as well, but in this case, with our students. The limit to this is it's not generalizable. It really is for our university. However, there's a lot of learning that is interesting, I think, for all adult part-time students. So we carried out 12 workshops, a total of 44 participants. I was very surprised they were fully subscribed within 48 hours. I was concerned that it would only be students who have the time, so the ones who don't have caring, who aren't working, but that wasn't the case. Most of them were working, 52% full-time, 52% had children, and I didn't ask these questions. That's the minimum number percentage from the discussions we had. Some were from Europe, some had chronic illnesses, so they really represented who our students really are. And the approach we took, so we started with them imagining the ideal module, what happens before the beginning of the module, during the module, at the end of the module, synchronously in these circles and asynchronously in the rectangles. The slides can be shared afterwards, so you can have a look at it. This is just one, we had 12 of these. Then we asked them to imagine an exceptional learning experience. So go down into one experience, what would it look like? And there again, they drew pictures, did collages, whatever, to get them to think in a different way. And we ended up with individual feedback. What do you absolutely want in the future? What do you absolutely not want in the future? And anything we might have missed out that they wanted to share with us. So we analyzed this. We worked on, everything was done online. I didn't mention that, but we worked online with Zoom and Miro. And we collected, so then all the workshops together on one Miro, the board, and analyzed the different themes. We came out with 5 important ones for us here. So the findings were, they need flexibility. Studies come after work, after family, after work, and there's no other way to do it. They're not 22, they can't decide, I'm giving up everything to study. The 2 other things come first. They need that flexibility to even sign up and to succeed. If they don't have that, they'll give up more often. Students need social and academic interactions. Just as in a presence university, social interactions are essential to keep the motivation, to have the trust that you can share things, you can try out things, you can take risks. Academic interactions, obviously, to build the learning, build your understanding, confront different ideas. And these can be done online. The research shows it, our own experience shows it, everything can be done online, but it's really central to a successful online study. Active learning, innovative formats. This was highlighted, but the previous one as well, both students and teachers say the same thing here. And what came out from our students was they want higher cognitive skills. They don't want the basics, they want really high level skills. They don't want only memorization. They know they need it, but that's not the whole objective of studies at university level. And they want to integrate it with their own experience. They bring a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge with them. It's important to use this, and this comes into the concept of networked learning, networked knowledge, that really we can make the most of it in an online university. Synchronous, 4th theme was synchronous sessions, what for? That was a very important theme. Why do we come together? We do not want lectures, that was sure. No lecturing. We want interactions, we want discussions, we want it to be worthwhile us being there. If it's to listen to a lecture, a video is better. You can pause it, you can go back, you can slow down, accelerate. In the case of our university, there was a big debate of should it be in presence, online, or hybrid. A lot said hybrid. It's ideal you can choose. You don't have to choose, both are available. It's about 1/3 who would like some presence and 2/3 who want fully online. They don't need to see each other. Again, they've got families, they've got friends, they're not building a social network at this point. Should attendance be compulsory? No, no one said it should be. I think one person said, yeah, I'd like the other ones to have to come because I want to see them, but basically they're adults, they want to be treated as adults. Should sessions be recorded? Yes, very important. Lots of research behind that saying it's really useful for them, and we've seen how they use it. It helps them study. Online exams, that's less relevant probably for you, but they were in favor of online exams, and they wanted testing higher cognitive skills, not memorization. offer mock exams. If you have to evaluate something, they've got to be able to practice it, and they need feedback on that. And they wanted feedback on their final exam. A lot of people, none of this, we didn't ask any questions, we really let them speak. And this came up in practically all the cases. They really need to practice, need feedback to learn these new competencies. So to conclude, our findings are very much in line with research on distance learning. They highlight the needs of cognitive presence. You need to be active cognitively. You need activities to do even online. It's sort of even or just as much online as in presence. And you can create these online. There's a lot of possibilities. We've had moot courts online. We have debates. We have presentations. Everything that we usually see in a classroom can be done online, thinking in a creative way. Social presence is very important. They need it to build trust and to build the motivation to continue. And teaching presence is central. We're not replacing teachers. We're not getting rid of the teachers. Teachers need to be there so that students reach the higher cognitive skills. They're there in the design of the course, but they're there also to make sure to push the students up towards reaching higher levels that they wouldn't on their own. And so that's the first point. Everything we found was in line with the research. And the second point is we're very much in the idea of a post-digital university. It doesn't mean there's no more digital. On the contrary, digital is completely integrated. And a traditional university is very much digital now. The sign-up process, sharing slides, just using slides in the classroom, all these digital. They exist in the traditional universities. They exist with us. There's no dichotomy between online and in presence. They work together, and I think that's very important to remember. And they affect the experience you'll get. So with this, I see my time is up. And if you have any questions.
Perfect, Henrietta, you're really.
There's a short bibliography if you're interested, and thank you for your attention.
Great. So we have a couple questions, Henrietta. So the first one is about, have you measured already? Have you done some measurements between this new learning approach? I don't know if you've already put it in place, but that's the question. What's the impact of this new learning approach on the academic performance of the students? Have you measured the delta between this old and new approach?
So yes, we've measured it. Yes, we've applied the new approach under very negative conditions because it was emergency remote rather than planned remote. But we already sort of had the plans in there. We were already online. So we were halfway there compared to traditional universities. We had the tools, we had the knowledge. So it was easier for us. We moved fully online, and we've been fully online since spring 2020. And the data we did, the papers coming out soon, but I can't tell you which article where. I can find it afterwards, but there's a paper coming out showing that the results were the same. The grades haven't changed since the pre-pandemic time, and the dropout rate hasn't changed either. And in fact, the data was quite early on. And it's been confirmed. I saw the recent data on dropout rates, and it's gone down, and our registrations have gone up. So more people are coming, and they're dropping out less. So that's very good news for us. The general research on online education is very clear. There's a whole movement called no significant difference. There's no difference between the two modes. It's not a mode doesn't make an education. It's the interactions, the activities that are happening, the teacher, what the student brings as well. So it's all this combination that makes a difference.
Great. So dropouts in terms of other metrics, have you already thought about other metrics that are interesting to look at in terms of
So we look regularly, sort of, or we get feedback every semester on every single course we have. It was interesting to see there's an evolution between spring 2020, when it was remote and we had some courses that really didn't work. So some people it just abandoned everything. They posted things online, but they didn't make much. Most of us teachers worked well, but we've seen over the 3 following semesters, the courses getting better and more appropriate for online education. And now all our courses are evaluated as very good or good for how good they are at how appropriate they are for fully online education. So that's working very well. Interactions with teachers are working very well. We usually have a majority or wide majority of students who are happy with it. What's still lacking is student-student interactions, and we're working on that. That's our next big theme. Because yes, that needs to be supported. Our students said it's important for them and they can't do it alone. Our teachers need to do it to help them. So group work, informally getting to know each other, giving them time before the class, after the class, group work during the courses, all these things. There's lots of different ways of doing it.
Awesome. Thank you, Henrietta. Excellent. So if anybody has other questions, we can take them at the end. We'll have an additional 10 minutes session for you to ask questions. So without further ado, Urs, if you want to take it away.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Give it up to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Valerie. I just share the screen. A warm welcome to all the participants here in the audience this evening. Unfortunately, I have no slides. I will give you an online live presentation, but give me 1 minute to introduce the company so that you know what we are doing and where we are located in which sectors. The company is Swiss Learning Hub. The product is also named Swiss Learning Hub. It's a platform for professional education. And we are at the moment, it's a modular platform, and at the moment we are active in 3 markets or in 3 sectors. The first one is vocational education. With Swiss Learning Hub, we provide companies which do educate which provide apprenticeships, a platform to plan and manage the whole apprenticeship of apprentices. We cover about 90 professions nowadays in Switzerland to manage these apprenticeships. The second one is where I will give you the live demo, is in the corporate education. And there we have a strong footprint in the financial area of banks and financial service providers. And the examples the demonstration I will give you is coming out of the banking industry. And the third one is the higher education, where we are the market leader for campus management software. So all the big universities of applied science in Switzerland are using our campus management software to manage the university. And last but not least, we have also one department, the learning media production. So we design, develop digital learning media. So web-based trainings, interactive videos, and combine them as well. So we have some larger organizations as clients for which we provide these services. And last hint to our company, we have once a year an event, the Education Forum. It takes place in Baden. It's not a virtual event. It takes place on the 20th of September. It's a half-day event, and it's a good event to meet people who are working in the professional education space. And we have some good keynote speakers and the World Cafe with partners. So if you want to take part, it's for free. You can register on the website. The website is swisslearninghub.com. So that was my marketing speech, and thanks for that. Regarding the case I'm going to demonstrate, I have created a user, John Doe. John Doe is a client advisor in a bank and has assigned the role client advisor. And as you can imagine, a client advisor has that profile needs several competencies, be it technical competencies or maybe communication competencies. And my slice that I've taken out for today's demo is the compliance competency. So John Doe comes on the platform, enters the learning part, and you see he is in a cockpit. And here he has one competency now assigned to his role, and that's the compliance. We call it compliance finance because it is specifically built and developed for the financial industry. The competency works with skill points. I come to that. John Doe has 372 skill points reached out of 618. What are the skills which are part of the compliance competency? We have here you see them, the 14 important skills which are linked to rules and regulations. Some of you might come out of the financial industry or a bank. You might be aware of some of the abbreviations. AEOE here at the beginning, that's automatic exchange of information, or Anti-Money Laundering Act, and or CDB is also anti-money laundering for banks. MiFID, the European market regulation. So these are essential skills or essential topics linked to skills that the John Doe has to know and to behave. When we switch to the overview, let me just switch it off. We have a spider graph showing exactly the same topics here, skills, as you've seen before. And John Doe can go through a self-evaluation, and answer questions. How good do I know that? What I think, how good do I know it, or I can behave? And based on the self-evaluation, you see here, that's the result. It seems he has some good knowledge about the code of business conduct, but in other topics is rather the knowledge weak compared to what is required. It is also possible to have a third-party evaluation. So let's say your colleagues, your peers, or your boss can give ratings to these skills. And then you would have, I haven't done it here in my showcase, but you would have then a similar or let's say self-image and image by third party may differ. But very important is at the end is the knowledge, which is based on assessments. So, and coming to the learning journey for compliance training, John Doe now is open. He can go through any of these trainings by by, let's say, that the organization is giving him deadlines, or he can by interest or by looking at the weaknesses or the gaps that he thinks, okay, I start with fraud, or I start with FATCA, or I have an important case which I need next week or next month. I start with MiFID, for example, for my European clients. So that is the competency compliance here. And of course, in his role as client advisor, you have other competencies as well, but I have just taken this one out. And this gives then the, or this can define your learning journey to acquire the required knowledge in the domain compliance. Briefly or shortly, skill points. Skill points are very simple, calculated on the Bloom's taxonomy. So we have behind the skills, we have indicators, and the indicators are based on Bloom's taxonomy, K1 to 6. Then we have the importance, 1 to 3, and we have the number of indicators. And this calculates to a number of potential or possible skill points. So you see here, the first one, IAOI, has possible 50 skill points, whereas others have 60, or here a small one, 12. So it is all logical, calculated by that mechanic. Once I have looked at my learning, at my competency profile, I then can go and launch the courses, the trainings. Here you find the titles of linked to the skills, and I can launch one, for example. And usually the trainings are built, here is a learning and the testing. Sometimes we have also practical cases, and at the end, a feedback about the training. So very simple, and the learning can be interactive videos or web-based trainings. As mentioned, we have different forms depending a bit on the topic and the knowledge which has to be communicated. Okay, so let me go back. So coming back to the cockpit again, I will quickly show you the how this is built up, evaluations. I will quickly demonstrate you the indicators. So you see that is now for this program, for this skill. To what extent does this criteria apply? And then you have knows. These are now 4 knowing indicators, which is on the Bloom's taxonomy level 2, for example. But we go also higher to level 3 or 4. But of course, most of it is knowledge based. And so we are talking about Bloom's taxonomy level 2 or 3. And that is how we build a user-driven learning journey. And this, of course, applies also for other competencies like leadership or communication, as mentioned, or technical skills. It's done in the same way. Of course, we have also the communities. So community about compliance, where the compliance departments manage these communities, answer questions, or give feedbacks. So yeah, that's it already, what I wanted to show you, the competency-based learning journey, so that the user has a profile, an assigned profile, or several assigned profiles. And based on these profiles are skills, and the user defines or decides on his own which way, which journey, the way the journey goes on his own. Or that's of course the other way around, the organization, and that is what very often happens in corporate learning, in the compliance space. The organization gives deadlines. By then you need to have successfully done this and this training. Needless to say, at the end, there's an assessment, there's a minimum a minimum number to achieve to get a certification. Okay, so I think I'm come close also to the deadline. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Urs. Yes, we do have a few questions already in the chat for you. One is about these competence models. The person says that, so Patricia indicates that she grasped only Bloom's. Do you use, so which competence models do you use to construct the mainstream learning journey and the weighting?
Yes, as mentioned, it's Bloom for the level, and of course then within the role, it's the importance. So in one specific profile, let's say anti-money laundering will have a higher importance than in another role. So there we have an importance rating 1 to 3, very simple, from low priority to high to top priority. And as mentioned, the skill point itself, the number then is also based on the number of indicators, which of course also links a bit to the length of the training. So these three these three elements calculate to the number of skill points.
And second part of Patricia's question is, how do you connect this formal learning with social learning opportunities?
Of course, we have to the skills, to let's say the topic. Let's take CDB, anti-money laundering, for example. In larger organizations, of course, you have special compliance teams responsible for anti-money laundering, or in smaller banks, you have just the compliance department. The communities are linked to the trainings directly. So when you launch the training, you immediately also see the community is there. Are there questions or hints from the compliance department already there? Or if you have a question at the end, you just post that question, and the community is managed by the compliance department.
Great, thank you. We do have quite a few questions about the LMS for the Swiss learner. I think you built, it's built, right? It's your platform, right?
Yeah,
and
that's
so
correct.
Do you adapt different competency or skill frameworks depending on the course you offer? So there's lots of questions around, do you partner with institutions? Can they themselves, are they responsible for the course they offer? Would they design their own courses? So I guess it's all the mechanics related to this course building. Yeah.
Yes, of course, the LMS, it's an LXP. So we have an LTI interface where we can intake other providers, content providers, let's say Coursera, edX, or whatever. And of course, then at the moment, we do define the profile and link then content to the profile. So it's not that, or of course, let's say a third-party provider has a profile, then we can take this profile on our platform as well. So that's
is the kind of in terms of learning formats, do you support blended learnings as well? training webinars or just self-paced?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So when we have a learning journey, as shown, of course, these has been very small trainings. Like I said, there's a learning part, a practical part, and an assessment part. But of course, it can be a much bigger learning journey, like we had before. At the university, for example. So this can be, I would say, 50, 100 items, and this can be a mix between pre-material, self-study material, and then in a blended manner or in a hybrid version, and then as a preparation to a hybrid session, to a present session, you have to go step by step, and then you take part in a classroom training or what, and then you go on. Yes, that's all possible.
Right. We do have a few more questions, so I think you have to stay for the last Q&A. Maybe just one quick question about self-evaluation. How do you deal with social desirability bias, as well as cultural differences in self-perception? I guess depends on the country also.
I mean, based on the experience I have personally, I know that Asian people, they rate them always great, and Swiss people tend to be more a bit more, yeah. They give less points for their own. So yeah, that's you see, self-evaluation is one instrument to give to get a first image, a first picture of, okay, how good I am or I think I am in this domain. But of course, at the end, we have an assessment which clearly says right or wrong. And
okay, I think we can continue on this discussion. Yeah. It's probably it's a larger discussion. So when we come back at the end for the larger Q&A, we can probably we can address the additional questions as well. So Patrick, if you'd like, feel free to take it away.
So hello everyone. Yeah, happy that I didn't make the mistake for not unmuting myself. I mean, it's a classic, right?
And we see your slides, perfect.
Yeah, so got it right first time, lucky me. So hello everyone, my name is Patrick. I'm working with Swiss Re now for 1 year. And there I have the role of senior data education architect. Now, I don't see myself, or I don't really have much of a focus on learning inside companies. Rather, I look at what is the behavior that people have today, and what is the behavior that they should be having tomorrow. And how is that behavior linked to the strategy that the company is trying to implement and execute? And by starting to look at this topic from that perspective, you start to ask different questions. So just to give you a little bit of context about Swiss Re, for those who might not have heard of Swiss Re, it's a reinsurance company, meaning they insure insurance companies like AXA, Zurich, and so on, from where we can get our individual insurance policies. And the thing that or the business model that Swiss Re has is that they evaluate risk and they transfer risk from those insurance companies and they cover that risk. So this is one side of their business model, and the other side of their business model is that they have a whole bunch of assets. or otherwise a big pot of money to make sure that should one of those big claims come in, they also have the money to pay for those claims. And if you look at Swiss Re as a company, you know, the thing that they've been doing for the past 150 years is that they are already data-led in everything what they do. So if you want to transfer risk, so cover somebody's risk, you need to have a very good understanding. What is the probability that something could happen? What are the factors that could influence an event from happening? Could something be prevented? And in case an event does happen, and how often would that event happen? What would the cost implications be of such an event? And what factors are depending on that? So when you start to look at all of those things, it starts to become quite obvious that, you know, data is not something new for the company. However, we are now in the transformation of becoming a more data-led company. And what does that actually concretely mean? Well, this transformation is taking place because of new technologies that have been coming up over the past 10 years in the field of data science. So it starts to become much easier to analyze bigger chunks of data, and not only by professionals who have a deep technical background, but also by business professionals like you and me. So I sort of compare it to the transformation that we went through in the 80s, where people were on their calculators and they were having their notepads, and then Microsoft Excel came along with VBA. And another such a step is actually happening today, where people are starting to learn Python, Spark, and they can start to run their own analytics on advanced platforms. And in this context, I'm responsible for getting those 14,000 employees of Swiss Re to work more data-led, meaning how can we get those 14,000 people to do analytics by themselves? How can they work better with data? So how can they challenge, for example, data that they are seeing? How could they argue with data? So the basic data literacy stuff. And the presentation that I will share with you today is the approach, how we're going to do that and how we are already doing this. So the first thing, what we are doing is, if you want to create a data-led organization, you need to have an understanding, well, what are actually the data skills that we need as an organization? So how are you going to classify that? How can you identify those? And for that, we have built a data skill taxonomy. And that taxonomy we've built up in 3 buckets. So the first one is having a data mindset. We as a company want to be more data-led. That means that also our employees need to have a data mindset. What do we mean with that? Well, that for us is a combination of data literacy, analytical and critical thinking, consultancy, change management, and of course, fundamentals in reinsurance. Next to that, we have a set of attitudes that we call imperatives. So adapting speed, being courageous, and creating joint movement. This bucket is applicable for all employees inside the company. Then the next bucket, oh, apologies. Yeah, there we go. The next bucket is the data project lifecycle. So for any data project that is being executed inside Swiss Re, we need to have these defined skills. So data initiative management, how do you lead a data project, translating a business problem into an analytics problem, then collecting, cleaning, processing the data, modeling the data, doing the analytics on it, deploying models, operating models. Then from those models, you need to start to communicate the insights. You can also then commercialize those insights, and that can be, for example, creating new products and services, but it could also be improving processes, for example. And then As the final part, we got data technical skills, which is a collection of skills that we need on top as an organization so that we can be data-led. Now, sorry, my PowerPoint is acting up a bit. Yeah. Now, if we want to implement that, really apologize for, yeah, there we go. So we have on one side goals that the organization wants to achieve, and on the other side we have that what our employees want to achieve and that they can contribute. So an employee like you and me, we've got knowledge, things we actually know, and then we've got skills and attitude, but the attitude part we left out here. And skills are actually the practical application of the knowledge that you have. And then referring back to Bloom's taxonomy that Urs was mentioning, knowledge would be level 1 and 2, skills would be level 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, if you look on the organization side, there we go. People have multiple roles. So, you know, in my role, I could be a project manager. I could be a learning specialist. I could be X, Y, and Z. And with those multiple roles, I need competencies for each to successfully execute those roles. And then you've got a job, and this is then the combination of the different roles that we know. And what we typically see is that recruitment is focusing primarily on the top part, so the job and the skill, whereas development inside organizations is focusing on knowledge and role. So if you want to measure this, you actually can start to measure this by measuring what is the knowledge that people have. So you do a knowledge assessment. For the skills, you can do psychometric assessments during training workshops, where you get people to be trained on tasks, and then you evaluate them against a rubric to see how well are they matching up. For the role, this is actually where people are starting to execute tasks, and those tasks are creating value for the organization. And now for the topic of data culture, we can then define, well, how often are people accessing tools and accessing data to assess their competency. And then for the job, so this is actually managing the human capital resources, where you institutionalize those skills. You can see how many of those data skills are actually defined per job role. Now, the challenge, what you see here, is what I've put here in red. So typically, L&D is focusing for employee development just on knowledge, where they are providing an online learning platform like Coursera, for example. And then they are expecting that just with that, people are building up a skill, but they are not being supported in actually training or being able to apply their knowledge inside a safe environment. Whereas a manager is typically focusing on developing the employee for a specific role. So when they then speak with L&D, there's actually a mismatch because L&D is just focusing on knowledge. For the skill part, this is typically during the interview and the recruitment, where the assessment is focusing on. And for the job, this is where the manager is then looking at what type of jobs do I need to have so that I can achieve my target. And with those different focuses, you see that actually, in order to develop somebody successfully, all of those 4 parts, they need to work together harmoniously. So how are we then going to approach this? Well, we are building now a new approach that is taking all of those things into consideration, where we first start off with a kickoff session, and this is just a 1.5 hour online meeting like we see today. But then it's followed by 2 personalized adaptive e-learnings. So here the content is adjusted every 30 seconds to that what you as an individual needs. So it's respecting the age, which has an impact on the speed at which you are learning. It respects the knowledge and the experience that you have, and it can validate every 30 seconds what is the knowledge that you have. So as a result, you get learning paths that are completely tailored, or learning experiences that are completely tailored to that individual. Then in the second part, we are doing workshops. These are held by experts. Here they can actually get analytics from where they see which group is struggling with which part in very granular detail, and that helps them to personalize also those workshop experiences. During those workshops, people are being trained on executing tasks, so they really get their hands dirty. And then after that they have this that they have done these workshops here, then they go to applying it on the job, where we are following up with different check-ins over time, and there the experts are then guiding the participants in how they have been applying that what they have learned on the theory as well as in the practice part. And then the last part, and this is something that we will then do at the end of the year, where we can do a review on the business impact, where we can see what is actually the output of those workshops. How have these check-ins been going? And then link that back to the actual projects that people were working on. And all of the evaluations that are being done throughout the workshops, as well as throughout the check-ins, are done against a standardized rubric, and that information is then going back into the learning platform. And based on that feedback, we can actually measure how is somebody moving from understanding the theory to then being able to apply it, then to actually successfully apply it inside their own work. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what type of analytics you can then see, here in this heat map, on the left side, you see the different learning objectives. So each learning objective is 30 seconds of learning content. And here on the top, you can see then the participant names. And if you would be an instructor, for example, you could see, well, there are 2 red here, but the rest is green, so that's probably okay. But here, there's a bit more yellow. So it might be a good idea that when they are teaching the class, they are going to talk a little bit about the definition of data ethics. At the same time, this is also a nice way to check, is the learning content actually created in the correct way? If it would not be, then it would be a complete red line along one learning objective. Here on the left side, you see that this is actually my personal learning journey. So a linear e-learning has just a set approach, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How this approach works is that it takes all of those learning objectives, and depending on what you answer, if you believe you are correct with the answer that you give and the time that you take, it will find the next best option for you so that you can learn as fast as possible. Meaning it's completely emulating having a personal tutor. And you can also see this here with the time to proficiency. This means that you achieve 100%. Here on the left, this is our lead data scientist. He took 1 hour 39 minutes to complete the content, whereas a business analyst with absolutely no background, they take around 2 hours 40. But both, we can say at the end, have reached the same level of knowledge and understanding. I think I'm running a little bit out of time, so I will just quickly go through this. This is just a little example. We are still working on this, on how we're going to do those task-based trainings. So we define the theory, then we define what are the tasks that people actually need to be able to do. And we are building then training modules around this. And then for the evaluation, so actually the capability assessment, what is it that we want people to do? And this is then what the business in the end wants to get done. And through this way, we are linking theory with practice, with business application and impact. Just a short outlook on where we are going. So if we want to actually measure the business impact of a learning intervention, we need to have a very clear understanding of what it actually is that we are doing. So we started off with first building a taxonomy, and that really means down to the level, what do we mean with skill? What do we mean with competency? What do we mean with knowledge? All of those things, so that we have just one common understanding. From that, we started to define the skill framework, the one that I have shared with you at the beginning. Then we started to define the jobs inside the job family. So for each job, what skills do you need? What proficiency level per job band? Now we're working on how do we assess all of those different skills. We are also building education content based on the skills. Then in the next step, we can start to do the resource management, where we can identify which skill do we have where, what is the utilization rate, and how can we make sure that we have right skills, right place, right time at the right cost. And once we are there, then we can start to do the real cool analytics stuff, where we can link this with business performance. So that concludes my overview. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Wow, this is this last picture is like, it's like a youth program. So I think it's not completely implemented. Is that correct? You're at which stage are you of this?
So we're at about 80%.
Wow. All right. So it's already in action.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, I've been working on this now for a year, and we're getting real positive feedback on this personalized adaptive learning, especially compared to stuff that you get from Coursera, LinkedIn, and so on. Because for me, it's a one size fits none, and the other thing is that there's also this missing link between the theory that you are learning and then being able to practice. Because this is actually the point where you can start to apply things. And that just needs to happen inside a safe environment where once you're making a mistake, you need to be able to get feedback and help from an expert right there and then. So this is the thing that we are piloting right now. Yeah.
So that means you have a feedback loop between maybe the manager and the person practicing the skill in your system already that's implemented?
Sorry, what is
So does it mean you
implemented?
have a way for, I suppose it's the manager giving feedback on the capability building of the person, and so you're receiving that data in the platform, and based on that you can say, oh yes, this person is progressing towards that.
Sometimes it will be a manager, most of the times not, because if it's a good manager, he should not have a clue about what the person is doing. And with that I mean that yes, a manager will have certain experience inside the areas, with the people that are reporting to this person. But hopefully they will have such deep level of expertise that they are better in the area where they are working in, that a manager is actually not equipped to be able to evaluate, unless you're making a rubric that is so clearly defined that it's easy to say, oh, well, actually he's displaying this behavior, so and so. So for some skills, yes, I would say a manager can be. For other skills, clearly you would need to have an expert, especially for when it comes to data science, and you're creating a machine learning model. How is, so somebody that has been away from that field for such a long time can really say yes or no, they are doing it correctly. That hands-on experience is really needed.
That makes sense. Yeah, we have a couple more questions. So was HR able to help you with the taxonomy and constructing the learning journeys?
No, actually, I'm helping HR now in defining a taxonomy for Swiss Re.
Yes, and I suppose this is going to be also a recurrent process. So how you have to update the taxonomy or to check somehow
so there are two parts. So you got the taxonomy, which is, I mean, that you can trace back everything to scientific papers, right? So you've got all of those definitions, but then you got that data skill framework. And yes, that is going to be something that will be kept in motion. It's a very young field. We as a company are also learning. I mean, I'm actually now going through a second iteration of this. Because after 1 year, we know, well, these skills are more important. This was not included yet. We see that we're a bit heavy on the governance at the moment, which is quite typical for Swiss Re, I would say. But yeah, so this will also keep on changing.
Great. We have a few more questions, but I think we are now moving on to the general Q&A. So I guess I'll stop the recording and we can make this a little bit more interactive if some folks want to ask their questions. So I just want to say a big thank you to our presenters, Henrietta,